When you're out in the world, you should always greet people with a smile and be looking to offer help, such as giving directions. That's some great advice I heard at a Toastmasters meeting about 15 years ago. Toastmasters is a global organization that is basically a club that helps people work on their confidence in public speaking. And, I went to it a few times when I was living in Boston long ago, but I think due to alcohol-induced anxiety and being a hermit from that, I never joined. But lately I've really been wanting to work on that. I had a buddy that said, you speak on Zoom calls, but that's easy. Even though I've pointed out sometimes it can be as many as 350 people, more like 120, 150 on average. And, he said speaking at an AA meeting in person would be much more difficult. So I actually went to one to do that, but I waited for all the regulars to share and ran out of time. So I ended up going to a Toastmasters meeting the other night. And, it's funny, the one in Boston, I don't recall participating at all, even having to introduce myself, although I might have shown up late. I did show up on time for this one, Mom. And, it's funny, I assumed I wasn't going to be participating at all. And so I didn't feel the need to needlessly pound my half calf, which I bring with me everywhere, although I've significantly reduced the crutch, but I'm still using it, sort of like I did alcohol, thinking it's going to help me cheat the system, even though it does nothing for me. But, and hey, it's a sober problem I'm happy to have at the moment. And so, I consciously thought, oh, I don't have to pound any coffee before I go in here, and I just brought my spring water with me. And came to find out that not only did I end up participating, I was more active than anyone but the host. Right off the bat, they made me get up and do an introduction. And then they only ended up having one speaker out of three. So the host actually kind of ad hoc did one himself. And luckily in the back of my mind, I thought, I wonder if they ever asked for a third, what would I speak on? And sure enough, they asked for a third. None of the members raised their hands. So I threw mine up, and guess what I spoke on? Sobriety. And told them how this thing works and how we just process alcohol differently. And it's like the cilantro gene I have that just changes the flavor to soap. That's a gene, if you don't know it, 30% of people have. And that's it. That's why most people love it. Those of us who hate it, it's because it literally tastes different to us, differently. Crazy. So, of course, I talked about that. And I talked about doing the work and what the work really entailed. Therapy, sharing, coaching, cold shower finishes, which of course I was happy to speak exuberantly on and could speak from the heart on all these topics, but especially that one. And it closed with saying, how I truly believe that I am amongst the luckiest, we are the luckiest to have this little problem, and why, which I've spoken to many times, and I'm going to do a full video on that soon. So that went on for 7.5 minutes, the maximum allowed time. They give you a little warning at 5 minutes, and then at 7 minutes, they give you the final 30 seconds. And so, I thought I nailed that. And then they do these things, table topics, where people speak for 2 minutes. They said, we want the guests included. Actually, I was one of two. And so you pop your hand up when you identify with the topic. For me, it was when they said, is it okay basically to cry in public? And so I shot my hand up and I talked about, how Brene Brown said vulnerability is the greatest act of courage, and how I do it, at least I did it on sobriety calls frequently when I was really in the throes of this addiction and trying to beat this thing, and how great it felt and how I knew to never apologize for crying, which people do all the time. Drives me crazy. And thank God some people have said in the chat, no need to apologize. And the host always says it, So that was a 2-minute little speech. And then at the end, they had me get up and give my thoughts on the experience and whether or not I was going to join. So it went great. And then they have an evaluator for every person that speaks. They have someone that does the time, and then they have an and ah counter. And for me, my only big violation was I said twice. I might have had an and an ah in there. Well, I don't think I'm an ummer, but I had something else. And But I didn't realize I do say a decent amount. I've been looking back, so I'll be watching for that. And then they gave overall feedback, and really it was very glowing, very positive. They were all shocked to have a guest get up and do that. One woman said she'd been there almost 20 years, and she'd never seen such an active guest, and certainly never seen one get up and give a speech on the first time. And the only constructive criticism was about, packing in so much information. Maybe take it a little slower, take a pause now and then. Great feedback. And then they have a person called a grammarian. She gets on and she talks about all, phrases that she really liked that people used. And the two I got credit for when talking about cold showers, I said the ultimate mood enhancer. And then talking about crying, I said crying is cathartic, which she really likes. So that was great. And she was actually the president that gave that. And at the end, she said, just so you know, members don't usually get to give speeches. And I said, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to join now. And I'm absolutely going to. They're even having all their officers are coming up. They're electing new ones, and they actually need a secretary. So I don't know how long you have to have been there, but I'm already considering it, possibly. So stay tuned on that. Oh, and just a quick note, the first main speech was actually on giving wedding speeches. And his 3 pieces of advice were to keep it brief, make it relatable, and not to rely on notes, which I thought was great. And he did talk about how people really aren't called to give speeches in life and how that's kind of a shame, though a lot of people there have to publicly speak for their jobs. But it was a great point about wedding speeches. And that's a colossal collision between doing that in a drinking environment. I knew a guy that just gave a speech it was after the rehearsal dinner. We were just having an after party. And this guy didn't even make it through the speech because he had drank so much. Speaking of which, I'd never really done any public speaking. I tried to give a eulogy for my grandmother once, and because I was out doing shots in the parking lot before that, so I could get through it, I got hauled off the stage after barely saying a word. So this was a great success, and my heart never skipped a beat. When I first started sharing on sobriety calls, it took me 3 months, first of all. I was a learner, just listening, not a lurker, some call it. Then when I finally did share, it was only because a woman only shared for 10 seconds. And I said, wow, it can be that simple. Doesn't have to be the 3 full minutes. Doesn't have to be perfect. So I threw my hand up and did it. But it was the hardest thing I'd ever done sober. I broke down crying, convulsing after the call was over. And yes, my heart raced during that, and it raced every other time I shared for many months after. I couldn't even raise my hand if there was a line of hands because my heart would race so much. And now on those Zoom calls, my heart doesn't skip a beat, and I was shocked. My heart did not race even once while presenting 4 times at this meeting. And yes, I did not need my crutch of the coffee. If I were still battling alcohol-induced anxiety, I would have been so dreading and anxious to have even had to give a 1-minute introduction. Sober confidence is real. So it was a great reminder that we all have unsuspected reserve strength inside of us. They say it emerges when life puts us to the test, but really it can emerge at any time that you need to summon it. It'd just be nice if we didn't have any notice in the case of pre-drinking, even if it's coffee. And that was the other great thing about giving my speech as a perfectionist. I didn't have to spend a ton of time perfecting my speech. And guess what? It was good enough, as they say. Good enough can be perfect. And I also like a phrase I heard recently, purpose over perfection, which I'm really trying to keep in mind. So as I always end perfectly for this topic, stronger, sober, much stronger, sober. That'll do it. As always, please like, share, subscribe. Thanks.